We're here from the Fintech Champions community, part of the Shift Open Finance community, and we're joined by the lovely Ollie, who's part of the community. So welcome, Ollie. Lovely to have you. Would you like to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Oliver Parsons. I work at Lloyds, where my team lead the launch program, which is our consumer fintech engagement program. My team look at all things fintech partnerships, innovation, and been at Lloyds for working in this role for about 5 years.
Amazing. What did you used to do before joining Lloyds?
So been at Lloyds in total about 7 years. So before did marketing innovation as well. Before that, did about 4 to 5 years as a digital director and brand director in the cycling industry for a company called Brooks England, who make leather bike saddles and kind of fashion bags. So a bit of a change, but I knew what I was getting into when I joined Lloyds, because prior to Brooks, I was also at Barclays, where at Barclays I did a number of different roles in some of their one of their trainee or apprenticeship graduate type schemes, leadership schemes. And then before that, I worked in TV and media production for 5 or so years. So a bit of a weird and zigzagging career.
Amazing. I deliberately asked you that question because I wanted you to talk about your zigzag in your career, but I'm really interested to learn how you ended up in working in financial services and fintech specifically.
So so I think creativity is the thread that goes through my career. So thinking about, television and documentaries and ideas, but also humanity and people, and I guess latterly customers. So a lot of documentary making is about human stories. And I did that for 5 to 6 years, and then wanted to do something much more commercial. So started training in marketing, and then worked actually for a small boutique retained headhunting firm where we were appointing kind of chief risk officers. Was quite inauthentic to me, actually. Like when you're in your late 20s, ringing up a CRO when you don't really know anything about risk, it was quite weird. So then decided to move into the banking sector and did the leadership scheme at Barclays, and then ended up going into cycling industry, left that because I'd have had to move to Italy. And when I came back, I wanted something where I could kind of meet customer need, but in a big scale organization. And there were very few organizations in Britain bigger than Lloyds. Started off in marketing, trying to change, try and be more customer centric there. But marketing in financial services tends to be very, I guess, focused on the comms side of things. And the experience I'd had in cycling was I was leading new product development. I was leading kind of segmentation of customers, sponsorship, a whole host of other things, and the digital experience. And as I moved into Lloyds, it was pretty clear that to get involved in more of that innovation, that Horizon 2 stuff, it would probably be more in that fintech innovation space, the partnerships as well, a lot more experimentation. So kind of naturally evolved into that role. And then when I kind of got into this role, after about a couple of years, it was pretty clear that the engagement model's pretty tricky for both sides, for both the big organization and the fintech. And then we began to look at how can we make that better so that it's more equitable for both sides. And that's where really developed into the launch program. And then now my team sits in a customer proposition space. So our role is actually now much more buy, build, and partner. So that makes it really interesting, kind of the full suite across. So where might we build something, where might we partner, where might we go and buy someone, and it's a good way of like keeping that human element of what I was interested in when I did telly, but pulling it through into somewhere where it can be far more impactful. If you think, if you average it out, every household in Great Britain has a Lloyds product in it. So other than probably like the NHS and government, there are probably very few places you could have the impact if we do things right.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you talk about buy, build, and go from there. I think because we have in our community a number of fintechs that are, some of them are just starting off the ground, whereas some are more, mature than the others. But what our sort of community really stands for is helping them grow and scale through fintech partnership offering that we give them. But you're saying on your side, you facilitate that overall partnership between Lloyds and the fintech, but you also see those, areas of where, they might need a little bit more support, and you buy them and help them and invest in them and grow them that way, and, help them tailor their proposition to your business needs. How's that sort of experience for you, and any sort of stories you want to share there?
So in Lloyds, we've separated out the kind of commercial experimentation, commercial partnerships with the investment. So there is a separate investment team that sit in group strategy. We obviously talk with that team quite a lot, and there's a bit of a two-way pipeline from the scouting side. I think one of the very reasons for launch was exactly what you're talking about. So what we were quite aware of is that for fintech, their biggest resource is time. And what can often happen is they will come into a big organization and they will pitch their product or service, and you'll get kind of 5, 6, 7 people sat there with their arms crossed, and they'll kind of poke at it in a way that we wouldn't poke at our own products. And we kind of leave them a bit dissatisfied. And then 6 weeks later, they have to do that again to another group of stakeholders. And then another 8 weeks goes by, they do it again. And they get stuck in a bit of a pitch process. And there's a kind of lack of candor, there's a lack of transparency. So launch was aimed at addressing some of that, but also making sure that there was a value exchange. So it's exactly to your point about growing the business. Like when companies come in, there's an explore phase, which is aimed to be short, quick, collaborative, and to find an experiment where if we get that experiment alive, both sides will learn something, so that even if we don't get to a full partnership, we both walk away having learned something. But even more than that, like if companies don't progress to the end, so we then go into a craft phase where we really scope out what the costs will be, and then we make the decision. We make a commitment that heads of or directors who are stakeholders in the business aligned to the area the fintech is operating in, will give them an hour of time to offer some strategic development advice. And my favorite story was in year one. We had a company who were based around, their proposition was kind of focused around death, if I can't really put it more, as unfortunate it was. And the founder had a very emotive personal story about family members dying and why he'd set up the business. And on first hearing, you were like, yeah, I really get this. I really see why we would want this. And it made a lot of sense. But as you began to dig in and you began to co-create with them, it was quite apparent that like, we're probably not going to have a death proposition. That's probably not something customers want because it's not really something customers want to engage in. And unfortunately, we didn't get to an experiment. But what we did do is we then spent that strategic kind of feedback session, and actually we ran to 90 minutes. And we had a kind of senior director there, we had an architect there, my team were there. And we gave a lot of feedback around, we get the personal story and we get how important that is for a founder, their story. But sometimes you have to kind of look, it's right to have that because it's a really key part of your message to begin with. But you need to think beyond that and think about where is this transferable? And what ended up happening with that company is we kind of made suggestions around opening up other verticals like kind of mortgage conveyancing and similar things. And that founder then reached out to me about 6 to 8 months later. We went for a coffee, and he hadn't been successful in the program, hadn't got the experiment, but came away saying like, this has been such a useful exercise for us. We've taken so much value out of this. I'm really pleased we were part of the cohort. And for me, that was the kind of proof in it. And that's just one example. We have a independent facilitator throughout the program who also is getting feedback from the companies as they go through. And that for us is crucial as well. Like we want to make it so that people can tell us we're doing a bad job or they're not getting value out of it because they're giving up a lot of their time to come and be involved. So those types of stories are the ones that always make me feel good because also the bank's vision is helping Britain prosper. And helping Britain prosper is the key thing we want to do. So if we are kind of abusing our position and not helping these fintechs, whether we get to the partnership or not, that's a failure for me on my part. And my part is there as a duty of care to the fintech and to the bank. So almost a bit of a double agent. So when we get excellent feedback and we know companies go away even when they've not been successful and they can develop their business, that's exactly why we set it up.
Yeah, that relationship kind of has to be twofold as well, because on one hand, we've got the fintechs coming in with all these innovative and creative ideas. They're creative in their nature, the founders. But to find what problems and what solutions they need to bring forward, they need to have that sort of conversation with you guys. Otherwise, how are they knowing, the gaps in the market? And on the other hand, we have the FIs who know that they need to partner with a fintech to sort of expand their growth and, go move ahead with the times. If they're not sort of giving that back to the fintechs or learning about what's out there, it just becomes sort of impossible. You're both sort of working in silo. So it's really great that Lloyds and yourself in your role are really thinking about this from not just a, technology partnership perspective, but more of a cultural fit and, taking the business both forward. And I think it's quite similar to someone applying for a job, right? Where you apply for hundreds of jobs, it takes so much time. If you don't get any feedback, how are you going to improve and, find your next job, for example? So, and there's a lot of frustration we see on LinkedIn from people who apply for thousands of jobs, but never get feedback. So this is quite similar. So it's really good that you have that sort of rapport with the guys and, have feedback processes in place as well. You joined Fintech Champions recently as well. I don't think it's been a huge amount of time. I think it was earlier this year. What was your sort of, vision when you joined our community and heard about Shift? What is that you hope to get out of it? And do you feel like it's supported you?
Yeah, so we've been speaking for a couple of years, I guess, with you guys about how we leverage your network for launch and how we find those kind of symbiotic relationships, I suppose. And as soon as you spoke to me about the champions and supporting the ecosystem and the environment, it was pretty clear we should get involved. And that's also, it's exactly to the stuff you're talking about, to help them build and help them be prepared and ready for when they come into the bank. One thing I do observe from fintech is there's a whole spectrum of things out there. I mean, I think the world's biggest fintech probably has a higher markup than Lloyds, right? And probably has more colleagues and things. So it's quite a sort of odd term, I think. And I think we tend to think about it more in the startup space. I think you often see really visionary people with great ideas and vision, but sometimes the product isn't quite there. So helping people know when to engage the big institutions, and also letting them know that being transparent and being candid and being truthful is the key thing is really helpful. But also the passion you see from founders, like you really want to bottle that up and take that back to your own business and let more people feel like that. But it does need some guidance. It does need some understanding of the challenges they're going to face. I mean, even people who've been in kind of, big tier one banks, you often see that they've become so enthusiastic on leaving that they've forgotten some of the challenges they might face. I often also think there's sometimes reasons why certain customer needs or jobs to be done or whatever people want to call it are not addressed by a bank is because it can be too niche. It may not be commercial. And I think helping people have a realism about what it is they want to do, is there a B2C offer there, or should they be pivoting to kind of SaaS solution they sell into banks, can really help all of us. And I think innovation in of itself, when I talk a bit about doing buy, build and partner, like for me, getting ideas, it can come from anywhere. It's really important. Like the network effect is really important. Being exposed to different people is crucial. I don't limit myself to reading about banking. Like I think you can take insight from anywhere. And that's part of I think that's part of the ethos of the champions, right? Is that you have these, you share a book of the week, you have all these different kind of bits of content that can be, perhaps not as weird and wonderful as I might put them, but like they are stimulating and thought-provoking, and then helping have some of those discussions with fintechs and helping them apply some of that learning, I think is crucial. And I think we have an obligation, right, on our side to be, help empower those people to develop these businesses.
Yeah, that's really good because, the Fintech Champions community itself was created to not only, help representatives from FIs like yourselves build that knowledge and awareness of the industry. We also, help with that partnership, but we also give back to the fintechs as well, which is something that you usually stand for. What's your sort of message to the others who aren't part of the community and why they sort of should join?
Well, selfishly, another reason for being in the community is like with the things like the launch program, like we obviously put that out there and we have a big web page and we invite fintechs to apply, and like you guys push it into your community, Innovate Finance, put it out there, Fintech Scotland support us and we can't possibly go through all the kind of affiliate networks that help us. But like we have cold people who come in and they apply and we haven't heard of them, we haven't met them, and people make it into the program that way. But also a lot of the successful people who come into the program, it's a warm lead. Like we've spent time with them before, we may have met them, we may have been having a couple of conversations a year for 1 to 2 years beforehand. And it might just be that we're waiting for that right time. We're waiting for the structured approach. So from a selfish perspective, being in the community, that helps me have more of those warm leads. And I think that's what should be crucial for the fintechs as well. Like the more you build these networking relationships, but the more you do it in a targeted and kind of controlled way, so you're not wasting your time. Like you don't want it to be spray and pray. Like you need to make sure you're talking to the right people in big organizations who can be the kind of gatekeeper to everyone else, because colleagues don't have time to respond to all the LinkedIn requests they get and all the messages there. But if you find those people who are, I guess, the pivot for you into the organization and find the right people, that will progress you massively. But also the other thing, like I think fintechs can learn from is from one another. So being part of a community, founders will learn more from other founders than possibly anyone else, because they're all going through this experience together. And I think that they are naturally quite open and sharing people, and they should be leveraging that, right? If someone's a bit bigger than you and maybe has got a contract at one of the tier one banks, invariably that founder isn't going to keep it a secret. They will probably come and have conversations, and you've got some of them in your alumni, right? And they're there. Leverage that. Like I think swimming in the kind of financial services pool on your own is hard work, but actually there is a really strong community of people out there who want to help and support and leverage that, because it's an invaluable resource.
What else do you think is important for an FI when they look for a partner within a fintech?
For my team, building a really trusted relationship is key. So I've had experiences where fintech will come and they'll say, I've got generative AI, or I've got AI, I've got algorithmic this, I've got that. And then it sounds great. And then we have a kind of synthetic environment, a sandbox environment, where we can ask people to go and put in there to prove that, I guess, the car has an engine. And it hasn't happened a lot, but I have had a few examples where I've been told that there's this amazing engine, there's all these amazing things that's going to come out. And then when push comes to shove and we said, well, look, let's just go in here in the first instance before we open this up to customers, it's got very cagey. And then suddenly they've come back and said, well, actually, no, this bit isn't built yet. We're doing some manual processes in the office here and we're doing that. And for me, as soon as something like that happens, the relationship's blown, and you can come back later and when you've built it. But ultimately, it's going to take a lot to rebuild that trust.
Yeah.
And I think often people want to sell in the big vision and the big product, and they want to say it's all there when it's sort of, it's not. And I think the thing that I would say is we understand that and we're aware of that. So being truthful, being candid, being honest, don't try and dupe us. Like, let's start from a position of trust and let's build true partnerships. That's where it really works. Like, this isn't a sales game. This has got to be a build together, learn together. And yeah, I think don't overhype the things. Like, your vision is going to be big and impressive, but when you're talking about products and you're talking about the technical side, like, make sure it's honest and make sure the type of experimentation that you might be suggesting is appropriate to where you are at in your stage, in your growth, because we're fully aware that it takes time to build, right? Like, it's not going to be there day one. Well, I mean, some companies do have it all there day one, but like, take the time, build the trust. And when that's there, like, it may take you 4 years, but that's worthwhile as long as you're getting something out of that and there's a learning experience. That's a far more worthwhile way of going about it than maybe being, thinking that you're doing this kind of dream sales job, but actually it could just be blowing the relationship.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Well, thank you very much. Very lovely to have you. And look forward to more sort of finding you more fintechs.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.